Welcome back to EPG program in Japanese. Paper 5 Communication through Translation. Hoya Kotsuji no communication. We are into module 26, that is Learn while practice. Expressions and CPCI. In the expression series, this is the fourth module. We started CPCI one module later. Jissen Shinagara Gakshusuru Yogento CPCI Yon. The module is written by me and together with Varalika Malik, and acknowledgement goes to Anukumari. Both Varalika and Anukumari are the trainee in the ongoing translation training program of CSIR NISCARE. This is the recapitulation from the previous module, and let me just sum up in brief. Ni atari comes from ni ataru, that is the verb, and core meaning of ataru is touch. Peripheral meanings of ataru include hit, contact, strike, etc. So core meaning of expression would be touching and doing something, or touching and it is connecting to something else. So niyatari clause may be treated as the main or topic clause. This helps in understanding the flow. And once again, it was confirmed that 5W1H plays an important role when the context is complex in particular. At the time of and while both can be used for niyatari, at the time of refers to a certain point of time, at the time of, and while, so at the time of and while is a duration, whereas while refers to duration and it's contextually used. And for this I would like you to refer to CPCI. Niyatari with verb or noun lays focus on this verb or the noun. One more thing about the expression, when we handle any expression, it becomes difficult to explain the expression because always you try to take help of something else. See, going on crutches never helps if you can walk without the crutches. So if you try to understand an expression by itself, it is much better than taking help of some other word or phrase to explain that, because the core meaning of the two cannot be the same. In this module, we'll be covering again application of CPCI theory and some translation techniques, using the translation techniques for translating expressions, simplification through combination and permutation, and looking through the point of CPCI is the key. And the expression which is taken up here in this particular module is nioite. Other things were same as the previous module, so I skip the other explanation. Let's go into the examples of nioite. One disclaimer here that the translations given in this module, and even actually in other modules, the previous modules, the final translation or the second translation shown in each example is not the ultimate or the perfect or the final translation. It's just an improvement over the previous translation. So this must be kept in mind when you try to see the translations given here. Here the print is too small, so I'll request Varalika to read. Basically, we are talking about nioite. Nioite, Varalika, we have three equivalents here probably: in, on, and at. Yes, can you read out the rest of the part?
Generally confused with other particles such as ni or they, it is advisable to handle all expressions independently.
Yeah, this is what was explained in the when we were doing recapitulation in the previous slide, that because nioite means in most of the time, or most of the time it is confused with the ni probably, or sometimes with they. I would say, tell me what is the need of nioite if ni and they are already there. So obviously nioite serves some different purpose. So you must understand nioite as nioite only independently. Let's see these examples. Nihon nioite mo jubun arieru hanashi dato omoimasu. Hanashi dato omoimasu, it's a talk which, or it's a thing which is talked about. Jubun arieru means which is quite possible even in Japan also. So even in Japan, so it is incoming here, that could talk well enough. And then the second example, yes, can you read Varalika? Watashi no? Watashi wa
keirio tantoshitemasu.
Okay, keirio tantoshitemasu. So as we have seen in the previous modules, tantoshitemasu is the key here. So I look after, I am in charge of, and depending upon the context it will change. So kerio tantoshitemas means I handle, I look after the accounting. Bumonni in the division, kono bumonni in this division, and watashi wa is the I. And here also it is coming as in. So ni oite is preceded by noun and translated as in both the examples. Here it seems that ni oite follows a place or time, time duration, where action takes place, and any other or the duration is referred to, and any other comparison would rather make it more complex, confuse you more. So let's see ni oite if it can be replaced by they, and let us also see how to deal with ni oite. This is one example, the first example of this module. Let's go next step. See, in this module, this line shows that koreva, it starts with koreva, and koreva has to be referred to something. When you are saying koreva genshiro no something kayatsu ni oite, so koreva is referring to something, obviously to the previous context. Unfortunately, in this case, the previous context was not there. So let's see, does it how much it affect if we leave out koreva. So let's try. Let's go for the next. This is without koreva. As I have already said, that the koreva is referring to something which is there prior to this particular paragraph or prior to this particular sentence. And in this particular case, it needs due consideration with other components. That is, if you see in the later part, the second line probably, de khangaeta kotoga. So de khangaeta kotoga covers this koreva. Therefore, it is possible to leave out this koreva, but you must decide to leave out this koreva only after you have completed the translation and confirmed if you are doing the translation correctly. And the only way to do so is maybe 5W1H. Frame may or may not help, we'll have to check. And in this case, koreva, yes, can you read the example?
Koreva genshiro no kaihatsu ni oite.
No, the last line, there is a koreva genshiro no akiresu
ken toshite aratamete tsukitsukerareta toraeru koto ga dekimasu.
Tsukitsukerareta to tsukaeru koto ga dekimasu. So can be taken as and ken toshite. So it's getting connected. See, koreva, it's getting connected in this form. So this gives an indication that it can be left out if we see the final translation. Fine. Now let's see the translation. We have gone here by 5W1H in this particular case, and the question begins with the nanni oite. So this is nanni oite is genshiro no kaihatsu ni oite in developing a nuclear reactor. And then naniga, so you have to explain what was the talk happening here. So it's shiozumi kakugenryo no, can you read out please?
Shori
mondai o
genshiro jitai no mondai toshite de wa naku
Atoshori.
Shori sunavachi bakuhandu taisaku toshite bunrishite kangaeta koto.
Okay, not so difficult. Bakuendu taisaku toshite bunrishite kangaeta koto ga. So separated out, think taisaku toshite as a taisaku. Bakuendu taisaku means as a backhand countermeasure. And that whole thing is basically atoshori. So atoshori sunavachi, and it's an explanation of atoshori. And before that is saying mondai toshite dewa naku. So genshiro jitai no mondai toshite dewa naku. This is important point here. Not the problem of the furnace per se, of the furnace, not furnace, the reactor per se, the nuclear reactor per se. So the translation is given here. This has been done because now you have done many modules, so I'm sure you would be able to do this much of translation. So the questions have been simplified into, say, a few questions here. And the next question is sorede nani ga dekiru? So genshiro no akiresu ken toshite aratamete tsukitsukerareta to toraeru koto ga dekimasu. So can be perceived as confronting it once again as the, can you read out please?
Achilles heel of nuclear reactor.
Okay, so can be it can be understood, or it can be considered, or perceived as something. Fine. Ni oite clause is acting as a topic clause very clearly here, and application of 5W1H on this ni oite and thereof on the and thereafter on the answers thereof connects all the elements. And this was the translation which came by joining the elements which were translated in the previous slide, and this is the fine tuning. Now in this fine tuning is Radhika explained what fine tuning have been done here. One is while is coming in place of what?
While is coming in the place of in.
Okay, wait. So ni oite and there's a verb. So ni oite, when there's a verb, that means the process is going on. So while suits better because it covers the duration, it covers the process. So while developing, and the next change is I think that's a probably minor change. While developing a nuclear reactor, considering the problem of disposal of spent nuclear fuel not as the problem of the nuclear reactor itself, but by segregating and considering as post-processing, considering it as, so it has been added here, it as post-processing, in other words as back end countermeasure. Again, it has been added here, it can be perceived as confronting and rest is fine. So ni oite in kaihatsu ni oite refers to a process that is kaihatsu, therefore it is translated contextually as while. Please understand, you are saying kaihatsu ni oite, so kaihatsu is not one point of time, it's kaihatsu is a process, it's long process. So at what stage that's happening is not clearly defined, so obviously while is much better. This is the second example. So let's see the second example. Was it can you go back one slide back? Okay, no, the next example. Yeah, see there are 2 lines only, but appears to be a little complicated. See, it says Seizono kate ni oite shojiru, and then shakai, then one more toitta kankyo, then one more that is tennen shigen eno aku ekyo o saishogen ni osai do. By the time you reach here, you start mixing up the words in your mind. So let's see what's the possible way out. The possible way out is that there are 3 nouns here basically, that is shakai, then kankyo, then shigen is tennen shigen, and kankyo is explained further. It is I think hikohen doya jin, it's what seibutsu tayose. So that's explanation, so adjective. So it's kankyo, shigen and shakai. Even kankyo, shigen and shakai, if we put either one, because at the time of translation, final translation, all these elements can be brought back, but initially this can be taken out, and all can be taken out, and only one ABC or one A can be put here. And if I say here, which you will see in the next slide, if we see that all the 3 have been replaced by ABC, I would suggest, if you are confident, then remove B and C also, so only A is left. And once you have A, then I would suggest that you retain shakai, because shakai is quite simple, that doesn't trouble you. So it will read like Seizono kate ni oite shojiru shakai eno aku ekyo saishogen ni osai doji ni hitobito no kenko to anzen o kakou shite itadaku yo onegai shimasu. Just see how simple it has become. Seizono kate ni oite shojiru kaihatsu, or shojiru shakai. So let's say A shojiru A eno aku ekyo o saishogen ni osai. So it has become quite simple and it becomes comprehensible, and this is the process followed here. The 3 elements which are to be substituted by ABC are basically translated in the rightmost column. And I would again say here that if you are familiar with the nouns, there is no need to replace them, but if the nouns are too many or complicated, then replace it, reduce the number of the nouns, because it doesn't help in translation. You can later on bring in those nouns. So you can apply 5W1H directly, including on the original nouns if you are familiar with those nouns. And now let's apply 5W1H on this. Now it would have been better if we had retained ABCD, but if we see the table, let's go with the the first question. What's the first question, Ralika?
Do suru.
Okay, sai shogen nyo sai. Then
Nanyo.
nanyo. Okay, nanyo is to be explained. Now here there are two options given. One is seizono kate ni oite shojiru. Then the full words. It's shakai. Then kikohendo ya. What is next? Seibutsu tayose to itta kankyo. By the time you reach here, you tend to mix up the words, and then tennen shigen ekyo o. And now let's see how it is coming in the right hand side. This is the translation done by an average student, not poor at all, but see it says in the manufacturing process the absence effect, not absence, it's what?
Adverse effect.
The adverse effect that comes out is towards society, environment such as climate change and biodiversity and natural resources. Now even in the words are actually complicating even the English also, but the English frame or the English structure is also getting disturbed. Now let's see the second option. The second option in this case is substituted components with substituted components. So it's seizo no kate ni oite shojiru a b c no akuekyo, and the translation is above adverse effect towards a b c that comes out in the process of manufacturing. Okay, now you find that the second is quite simple, and if we use this one, then it will help connecting it with the rest of the elements very easily. Let's see the next question.
Doji ni nani o suru?
Okay, because there's something else done here, and that is done doji ni. So doji ni shitobito no kenko to anzen o kako shite itadaku yo onegai shimasu. So that's while requesting for needful to ensure the health and safety. Not very difficult. The only thing was itadaku yo onegai shimasu. You must have heard onegai shimasu, and then you must have heard yatte itadakitai n desu ga onegai shimasu. It says itadaku yo onegai shimasu. You must have heard this expression very often, but the translation, when you do, yo is difficult to translate, and here in this case it's translated by saying requesting for needful. So needful goes as an equivalent for yo here. So this is, although this is not the expression covered in this particular module, but just as an additional learning, this is one more way of one more expression that can be remembered or put in your corpus. Now I think you will have to read the comment. The
substitution method helps when there are too many unknown nouns.
Okay, when there are chemical compounds, medical terms, even the unknown compounds where the term is too big or too complicated, it always obstructs you in your thinking, and it actually takes away your freedom. So it's always better to replace them with the familiar nouns or with ABC. And the second is, at the same time, application of 5W1H makes the positioning of equivalences in the target language clear. What should come at what place, it becomes more clear when you apply 5W1H. Now let's see this is joining the elements, and if you see carefully, it is not making a good run. You can't read it very smoothly. The components have been put directly. Instead of this, now we are using the substituted part, that is the ABCD part, and now you see, keeping at the minimum limit, the adverse effect towards ABC that comes out in the process of manufacturing while requesting for needful to ensure the health and safety of people. And I think some more fine tuning we can do, and that fine tuning is keeping the adverse effect generated during the process of manufacturing on the society, environment such as ABC, that is climate change and biodiversity, and the third was natural resources at the minimum. So it's a little complicated sentence. Keeping the adverse effect at the minimum, keeping the adverse effect of something at the minimum, keeping the adverse effect of something that got generated somewhere at the minimum. Does it make some sense? So it's the frame basically. I'll repeat: keeping the adverse effect and connect it to the second line, that is at the minimum. Keeping the adverse effect which is generated somewhere, that is generated during the process of manufacturing, at the minimum, and keeping the adverse effect on something, on the society, environment such as ABC, at the minimum. So there are three components. One is keeping the adverse effect at the minimum. This is one clause, and the second is which is generated during the process of manufacturing, and the third is on something, on the society, environment, etc. This can become very clear if you apply 5W1H, and it will be much better if you use frame, and to support frame use 5W1H, it will become much more simpler. And the last part was, and at the same time requesting for needful to ensure the health and safety of people. This is what I had explained in the previous slide, so we skip this one. And the points which we have discussed here is that the translation obtained through substitution plus 5W1H is better. There is no doubt about this. And ni-oite connects the preceding noun, that is in this case kate, with the verb shojiru. The expression explains the process, that is kate, and is translated as what's the word here? During. So it's because it's kate, again it is during. So ni-oite, because it's referring to kate, so it is during that particular process. So the point which you should remember is that even though that ni-oite, oite has got a kanji and it has got a core meaning, it is definitely closer to in, but in most of the cases the equivalent will be coming from the context, or it will be getting derived, or it will be derived from the context. Now let's apply 5W1H on one more example, and the example is given here. I'll skip reading the example and let's go with the questions. Yes, Swaralika, one by one, please answer. Okay, Toshanu Gyose Kiwa. This is the topic we are talking about. So she's asking Nani Suita. I'm saying the topic is this in this particular case.
Itsunokoto.
Itsunokoto. Itsunokoto is Genzai Oyobi Shorai ni oite.
Do natteru.
Samazama na risk ni sarasarete ori.
Sorede nani no kanousei ga aru.
Okay, Yoki senu gyoseki no hendo o what is yaburu kanousei ga arimasu. Kaburu. Okay, kaburu kanousei ga arimasu. So it is there is a kanousei. Do natteru is that there is a exposure, or there is a exposure to the risk. Then Soreva, next question is risk no what is it? Kenzai ka? Kenzai ka ni yori. So risk no kenzai ka ni yori. So nothing has been brought from my side. It's everything is picked up from the sentence, and all elements or all particles are covered in the answers. So application of 5W1H, which gives the sequence wise equivalence as it is given here in this example, that has been that has to be fine tuned, of course, later, and hence this is a easier way of doing the translation. Now let's put the components here. The components have been put here, and the fine tuning is in place of company's business performance, it's changed to as regards the company's performance. As the company is exposed to various risks in the present and future, it may bear the unexpected performance fluctuations by visualization of risk. There are two things changed. One is as regards. This makes it because company's business performance, it's very difficult to you to connect tosha no gyoseki wa and kanose ga arimasu. So the performance of this company has got a possibility, something like this, difficult to connect. So as regards the company's performance, it goes separate as a topic, and now you speak as the company is exposed to this there, it may bear the unexpected performance fluctuation by visualization of the risk. Here ni-oite is contextually getting based on the preceding noun, that is shorai. In other words, it refers to the time, that is and that time is genzai or the shorai. The options what is used in the second translation, fine tuning, tuned one, that is as it is exposed to, can also be done as owing to the exposure to something, or exposure and continuation. And in this particular case, there are two options. I have just said that as regards has been put because company's business performance is difficult to connect. in the first go. Now you have seen the two translations, then you will be able to link it. But if you don't see it, it doesn't occur so easily. So you can have a direct approach also if you can. Otherwise, as regards, simplify the process. And now let's see the CPCI behavior, particularly of neo-8 in this case. This is example number 1, and in this the it's translated as what, Varalika, as while?
While developing.
Okay, so while is not the translation of neo-8, it is the translation is in. Now while is coming from the context, because the context says, refers to a in this case kaihatsu.
Yes.
So kaihatsu is a process, it's a development is a process, it's not one point of time, therefore contextual. And the next example is I think this was in, or here it is, neo-8 is khate neo-8. So keeping the adverse effect at minimum limit that comes out in the process of manufacturing. So says no khate neo-8, so in the process of manufacturing. Again, so it is contextual because no, is it contextual in the process of manufacturing? Yes, this is a doubtful thing. Is it in only here, or there is a? So it can be treated as core also, because neo-8 is quite close to the core. Otherwise, it is contextual because this in is coming khate neo-8. But you will ask me that in the previous example, kaihatsu has been treated as process and khate is not process. So khate is one step, and in this step we are saying, so if you want to treat it as process, then it will become while, and maybe the running text may have to be changed, keeping the adverse effect at minimum limit that comes out during the process of manufacturing and is towards, etc. So it's possible. If it becomes during, then it obviously becomes contextual. In remains a border case for contextual or the core, but it's quite close to core, in fact, instead of contextual. And the third example was as regards the company's performance. As it is exposed to various risks, it may bear the unexpected performance fluctuation by visualization of risk in the present and future. During the present and future we don't say, though present is just now, and future present is actually subjective. It can be just now, it can be few months, or it can be few years, but future of course is a longer duration. So it can here it has taken in the present and future, but it can definitely be during if you have a different word here. So probably here also it's a border case and can be treated as core also. So though it's written here contextual, but this can be treated as core also. So I would say that you can make note of it, and that can be it can be understood that in is the closest possible or the core meaning of neo-8, but in does not take what I say is the action in the oite or the dynamism in the oite. So that is not very clearly covered by in, because it is going into, say, by visualization of risk in the present and future. So the dynamism or dynamic part is going into the verb here. And neo-8 in most cases will be translated as per the parts of speech that precedes and succeeds neo-8. However, overall the equivalent will be selected depending on the context only. So as we have seen in the previous modules also, expression normally are translated vis-a-vis or with reference to the context. The learnings are as follows of this module. Generally one gets confused when comparison is made vis-a-vis the other particles or other components, such as neo-8 versus ni or they. It is advisable to handle all such expressions independently. There could be possibility that one expression may have an equivalent which is quite close to another expression, but this is coincident. The core meaning of two expressions is never same. So it's better to deal with each expression independently, because understanding one expression itself is quite difficult. If you try to put another example or some other comparison, it will definitely make it more complicated. And the second learning is that neo-8 clause usually acts as a topic clause, and the application of 5W1H on neo-8 and thereafter on the answers thereof connects all the elements and it resolves the issues of translating or the translation process. It is advisable to use a substitution plus 5W1H combination as it is, as it will ease the comfort level, as seen in one example where two methods were shown on one particular example, because the nouns used, three nouns used, had some adjectival parts also to at least two of the nouns. You get lost into that beyond a limit and it affects your performance in the overall translation. In fact, the translation was not correct also. Now, as regards ni hoite, it usually translates as in. So, it may not be wrong, but you should ensure that the essence of in is transferred properly. Once again, we have seen here that in all the combinations it was found that 5W1H plays key role in particular, and application of 5W1H in rendering in the target language ensures accuracy further. These are the references which you can refer to for some more information on this particular related to this particular module. Thank you so much. We'll see you again with few examples in module 27. Domo arigatou gozaimashita.